Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Casually Hardcore Podcast, episode 62, with a very special guest. You know him as Alex Arex from gaming. We've got him covering Borderlands 3, Destiny 2, Division 2, Animal Crossing with your partner. It's so fascinating. It was just like I was sitting here, just like I've been following your stream, your content for a long time.
Mm.
And it's so vast. Like I feel like we talk about a lot of the same games. So on today's show, I hope that we could dive into obviously what you're covering, what you're excited about with like Blue Protocol,
Mm.
Half-Life Alyx you're playing. So this is gonna be a fun show that we're gonna just kind of jump into. Chris, what do we got? How do we pay the bills? And yeah, I'm gonna let you take over for a minute.
Last week we talked with Avalon Star, so if you guys haven't seen that one, that was a nice time talking about Final Fantasy and Destiny, and whether or not those are two games to be paired with each other and so on. Next week we don't have our guest confirmed yet, so it might just be Brian and I, or we'll see. Everybody's schedules are a bit up in the air lately, which is why thank goodness that we have our partnership with I just lost it. Who handles your latency, Brian?
Exit lag handles our latency.
There it is.
With games.
Thank
So
you. I
we've
couldn't
got that.
find it on the words.
But I'm gonna shout out some of our members for YouTube helping support the channel. So our newest member, and I'm gonna mispronounce it, Axla Verja. Thank you so much for being a member, hitting that join button. But we also have Tyler, Cody, Philip, and Airman, ranging from 15 months all the way from 11 months. Some of our oldest and long supporting members on YouTube. So thank you guys for supporting the channel and this podcast, making it possible for us to continue and do this kind of stuff, fun stuff for you in that regard. So, Alex, why don't you do just a brief introduction? Because, I mean, you just crossed over 1 million. So if for some reason there's somebody in our community that doesn't know of your content, I think the odds are low, but I will give you the opportunity to say what you do, why you do it, and what do you love about gaming.
Sure. So, so I'm Arex, part of the Arex gaming team. There's four of us at the moment. So we run a channel that covers a wide variety of games. I apologize, by the way, my camera seems to be flickering. I have no
It's
idea what it's
fine.
doing. But
Audio's
yeah,
good.
so we cover a wide variety of games. Obviously, some people might know us for things like Monster Hunter, Destiny, Division. Basically anything like loot related. But at the same time, we also I'm a huge Nintendo fan, so whenever we can sneak Nintendo games in there, Zelda is my number one franchise, so like that will always be there. But we basically, ultimately, we just cover the games that we like. We're also massive anime fans, so you'll see a lot of like anime related games that pop up there. Some things we'll cover extensively, some things we'll cover, in passing, but basically we cover whatever we like, and just I just enjoy games. It's just one of those sort of things. It's like I've never been one of those people that's so like picky about graphics and specs and things. I'm just like, I just want to play games. I want to have fun, and then I'll cover what I enjoy. When I get bored of it, I'll move on. It's that simple, really.
It's a good healthy attitude, especially with games, especially with loot related games.
Yeah.
Obviously, like you being a Destiny player and a Division player, like some of these games have no lack of drama that sometimes pops up. And somebody, because I posted it like a couple weeks ago, just like, hey, here's the new Destiny 2 meta, or at least the auto rifles are back, and I'm loving it. And somebody's just like, they're just like trashing. I hate the game. I'm like at that point, I'm like, it might be time just to take a break.
Take it exactly 100%. I mean, that always baffles me. I'm like, I get there's like different levels of investment, but like I love my games, and I'm like, I've been playing games all my life, right? So I'm super passionate about them, but I'm just like, it's just not that deep. I'm like, if once like, obviously I get that you care about it, right? And like, obviously if you've been competing in something, and suddenly it changes the way you play, I get the emotion attached to it. But I'm just like, for me, I play something, and if it really gets to that point where I'm just like, this is frustrating me, I'm like, this is an option. I'm just gonna go and play something else, because why? Life's just so much easier if you just chill.
Especially right now. And so that leads us to our first question, a little bit of topical, hopefully a little fun. If you could pick, like, this is a game that people play, and now we're like playing this game for real. If you could only pick one game to take into quarantine with you, what would it be?
Breath of the Wild, 100%. That game, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, is like one of my favorite Zelda games. Very close. It's like joint, just below one, because Ocarina of Time is number one. And although Ocarina of Time is like my favorite game, I feel like Breath of the Wild is the perfect quarantine game, because it's just like it's just a sandbox of like possibilities, right? I just love jumping into Breath of the Wild. Sometimes even if you don't have a thing in like a thing you're planning to do, you just wander around and mess around and do crazy things. It's literally like there's there's still so many things that I have yet to do in that game. I mean, I've done all the kind of the main stuff, but like, I mean, if I was in quarantine, I would go and collect 900 Korok seeds.
You've done more than I have. I always like with open world games like Breath of the Wild, I just get lost for hours. So I've probably poured 80 hours into that game, but I have yet to finish it. Like I just kind of go like, okay, I'm going to go in this direction. And so that's got to be, I definitely would say that's a contender. Chris, how about you? You get one game, quarantine, which technically we are with Dallas somewhat, but go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if this game has internet connectivity. So let's assume no, because that would be the true test. Because otherwise MMOs are super easy. There's lots to do. Any MMO, I have lots to do in any of it. But if I don't have internet, it would probably be Minecraft. It's not something we talk about a lot here on the channel. It's not something we cover. It's not our typical subject, but I have dumped endless hours into it. And assuming that quarantine here just got extended to April 29th and could be pushed out well into the summer at this rate.
Beyond Easter?
If that happens, then it needs to be a game that I can't beat in just a few weeks. So something open sandbox without internet.
So that's oh man, you've thrown a wrench, because I was going to say like obviously an MMO, and I would say right now either Final Fantasy XIV, and I would go and maybe guess New World. We're going to go hands on with that next month. Blue Protocol the beta got delayed, so I'm just like itching to play that one. That like now I get your anime connection, because I was like wait, Alex is posting on Blue Protocol. Okay, I gotta go check that out. And it's like, oh yeah, like, this is really cool. But so without internet though, that's a twist. Because I love my internet. Let me think here. I would say probably if it's going to be a classic, I would do Octopath Traveler. You got all the different characters, the visual art style, great RPG. I would just max out on everything in that game, and there's a lot of hidden stuff. If this was in the future, that we tried to post, but YouTube's broken, which means they're changing their algorithm in real time. Bravely Default 2 demo just dropped today. I don't know if you've seen the mini direct that was just released.
Yeah. Just caught up on that one just quickly. Yeah.
So Bravely Default 2, dude. Like Bravely Default was great. The only reason I wouldn't take the original into quarantine is because I can't play the 3DS for a long stretch of time without my hands hurting, and I'm just like, yes, I'm gonna be able to play this with a real controller.
True.
That's a game changer right there. So, all right, that's a little bit of fun.
Why can't we have a pack? Why can't we have? I know that there's logistical issues to do with developers and publishers all being different, but why can't they put out like a $200? You get all of the game of the year from last year, just all of them.
I think it's called
just
Game
like
Pass.
A whole chunk. So it works out real cheap, but like you're getting, because they're not all on one streaming service. They're not all on Game Pass. They're not all on like just a nice big variety. Maybe you already own a few. Let's just finish out your collection for the price of 4 games.
I think it's a great idea. I think that I think that's a fantastic idea, but who would publish that? How would the money
How do you split that up?
get distributed? Like, well, obviously people bought it for my indie title that
of course
happened to be bundled. I don't know, man. Like that's where you'll see more of the Nintendo online service, and here's all the games of the year that were previous, 2018.
Here's all the Zelda games.
It's kind of like the Kids Bop thing.
And haven't told you.
Kids Bop 2018, baby. So what were the hits? So on that note, Alex, you just created a new channel. I want to give you a second to kind of promote that because it actually is, I think, a very important thing when it relates to gaming, and especially what this stereotype gamer is. And you guys are breaking that with video games. And that is a real life RPG. You guys are grinding it out in real life, working out
Pretty
hard.
much.
I didn't catch your partner's name on video games.
Socks.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess his handle. And so you and Socks are putting. You've released 2 videos about this channel. Would you tell everybody here about it, and then we'll dive into the rest of our conversation?
So video games is basically our attempt to combine the worlds of gaming and fitness. So there are 2 things that, in like mainstream media, are often seen as, gamers are seen as these guys that just sit in their basement, eat Doritos, drink Mountain Dew, and just don't go out, right? And it's like that may have been a thing at one point in people's lives, but honestly, that's just like one of those silly stereotypes now. And it's just like it's all kind of sort of came about because both me and Socks went sort of through similar journeys. Like for me, it was about 3 years ago. Like I just used to be like massively overweight, and then kind of got to this point where I was like, I want to fix up. I want to, I just kind of had that self-realization moment in the mirror, and I was like, right, I need to do something. And then I kind of initially just went to the gym just to try and get healthier. And then suddenly in the process of doing that, I was like, I actually really enjoy this. Like, I'm the sort of person that used to do anything he could to avoid any kind of physical activity. It's like, hey, I could walk to the station 5 minutes away. Nah, let me just go by the car. Anything like that. And like, but now I just, it became really addictive, and suddenly it became a thing that it almost became what it is as important to me as gaming now. I spend a lot of my time researching it. I'm learning a lot of stuff about like fitness. I learned from like a lot of seminars. So just so much of my life is now also that thing. So I basically kind of want to sort of have a place we can kind of build a community around it. Because what I've realized by sort of sharing a lot of what we do, sharing a lot of like the content and stuff, is that there's a lot of people in the games industry that potentially, or kind of the gaming sphere, that potentially either also do that or want to get into that, but they're just a little bit like, I just don't know where to start because it's so daunting. So we kind of wanted to create video games as a means to sort of lead by example, because we're not obviously certified, so we're not going to be out here teaching people, but we're going to be more so like, here's a place that feels there's a lot less scary, and we're just doing this all together, and yeah, just trying to break down barriers, really.
So one of the things I've always believed, and this is just a personal, I guess, thought I've always had, is that when you work out, when you train your body right, when you eat right, you're actually a better gamer. When you look at especially professional gamers, like all the ones that compete at any kind of pro level have a strict workout, have a strict diet, like they are competing. And so it's interesting, and I'm wondering if over time we can change that perception. I am currently overweight, but that's something that exercise has always been important to me. And so that's where like I was really inspired by what you guys are doing. And so thanks for putting that out there. I'm looking forward to following that channel.
Just a little bit of kind of unfortunate timing, because obviously because we've got all these big plans for it, and like we planned initially content up until June, and I was kind of, there's one thing that I can't talk about just yet, but there's like a big project that I'm filming that tentatively had to put on hold because it just wouldn't, like, although I filmed it, it would just be really weird to put it out in a time when no one can access a gym. It would just be like, it's just the wrong timing for it. So we've put that temporarily on hold. Like it will happen, but it's just until this kind of blows over, we need to kind of pull that back. So I had to pivot a little bit, and we're working on some stuff that we can kind of do, from home. So, in an ideal world, it would have been, had all these grand plans, but that's, there's still
that's what I'm kind of hoping to see, especially with all of what's going on. I was like, man, what could I do? Like with 15 minutes, like between whatever, it's like just like oh, you're waiting for your next round in Destiny, like drop it. Here's some quick things that you can knock out. On that note, regarding content creation, you're full time, crossed over 1 million. Congrats! I mean, that must have been a massive milestone. How long have you been grinding towards that goal?
Been about like 8 years now. So it was me and 269 that kind of created the channel initially. Ran that for the first, say, 6 years, and it's within the past couple of years that we brought Paradise Central and Vestmore on board. So about 8 years now. So it's been a long old time.
How's it working with partners? Chris and I have been working together for 3 years on our channel, and so it's like I've always recommended it. Like, find people that you can trust, that you like, because oh my gosh, 3 games just dropped today. Like, okay, we're gonna have to divide this up. Right. How is it like? And then I'm curious, just on a professional level, how was your process for bringing on somebody who you've already established a channel, and now you're bringing on other creators? What was that process like for you?
It takes a while, because because me and 26 have been friends since university. So we were just kind of we worked at university, then we moved and worked at Microsoft, and then when we left Microsoft, we obviously did the YouTube stuff together. So we've obviously always had the same kind of work ethic, and it's why we've so connected so well. We're just like, we're very like, we just get stuff done. Like, it doesn't matter the time, things like that. It's just like, if something needs to be done, it's just going to get done. So, and over the years of trying to, as we were sort of building the channel, we've kind of attempted to bring people on board before, like people that we've been friends with in the past. They've kind of come on for different times for different things. But ultimately, I think a lot of people, like, they sometimes, they'll often like the prospect or the idea of like doing all this content creation stuff. And then when they suddenly get inside and realize just how much work it is, they're like, I didn't realize it was this. So it took a while. And then, but so for us, there's never really been like a specific kind of recruitment process, but more so like we've just, friends that we've had that have kind of come around us anyway. As we got to know them better, it's just kind of opportunities come up, and it's been like, is this something you want to do? And then we've kind of brought people in. So it's definitely been quite a slow process to do that. But yeah, I think we've definitely sort of landed in a position where, like, now the team that we're working with, everyone sort of, shares the same kind of work ethic and ethos and stuff, and we're all just kind of driven just to get things done. But
that's a lot of risk. But there's a lot of advantages to it. I would rather, that side looks a lot less scary than the people that do this alone. The people that do entirely on their own, they are a one-man team. They do their own editing, they do their own filming, they do their own content. They're the face, they're everything. What scares me there is like, what happens if you get sick? Like, what happens if you want to take a vacation? What happens if 2 games drop on the same day? What happens, like, I mean, Brian and I are the game that has really defined our channel. It hasn't defined us as gamers, but it has defined Work to Game in many ways, is Final Fantasy. And Final Fantasy will have these huge content drops on one day. And Brian and I may not equally be excited about all of the content. And we definitely can't get to all of it in one day. And there's people looking for those guides. And so we can kind of say, like, here's stack A, here's stack B, go nuts. And so, like, how do you guys deal with when you both want to play the same game, or when like a game comes out that you feel the channel should cover, and then none of you are maybe like, yeah, I like that game, just not right now? Like, do you guys just
yeah, we'll pass on some things like that, because I mean, ultimately everything we cover on the channel is things that we enjoy. Like, you know, if we didn't have the passion in it, then we wouldn't cover it. But there's 2 sort of different ways we cover games. There's sort of like the looter shooter coverage, where we'll invest in it and it'll become like a staple for the channel. It'll be like long-term coverage. So that means then from that point onwards, we're looking at patch notes, we're looking at updates, we're looking at everything that gets dropped for it. Meanwhile, then there'll be some games that will come out that will be finite games, you know, it'll be like a story sort of thing. So it's like, all right, you know, we might just put up some gameplay for this. So it'll be quickly jump in, run through the first couple of hours. And then, you know, if people want to see more, we can do more. Otherwise, it might just be, that's the extent of the coverage. But we'll always kind of divide it. I mean, like the way that it often works, because obviously within the channel, although we're like obviously we've got the whole team, the guys also stream. So like the majority of the, like 3 times a week, 2-6 Paradise and Vestmore will stream. So the initial videos, I'll do like a big chunk of them, and then obviously outside of the streams, then we'll divide up whatever else kind of needs to be done. So we just structure everything as best we can. Like, we have like meetings on Mondays and kind of just talk about like what the week looks like, what we're going to be doing. We schedule out all the content for the week, and then obviously things can change. Like if updates drop, or like suddenly someone announces something, we have to pivot, then we do. But we basically just lay it all out, and then you just kind of assign stuff to people and sort of go from there.
So
sounds
on that,
like a job.
Sounds like a real job, like a career, maybe.
Yeah.
How important is streaming into y'all's process, into content creation, into that whole setup? Because it is so different in content, and what it delivers.
I think it's still like super important, because it's just another way to connect with people, connect with community, build communities around it, you know, because it's one thing like YouTube is, you know, although you have like communities on YouTube, you have people like commenting, people that like, you know, subscribe to you, and obviously, you know, do that. It's YouTube is a little bit more impersonal, because obviously, you know, you comment, you can reply and things like that, and you know, you see familiar names and stuff, which is cool, but it's just not quite the same kind of connection. So obviously Twitch allows us to then actively engage with people, actively kind of talk on there. And also it means that if there's like a big game that we are super excited for, like something like Monster Hunter that we're obviously well known for, we then provide the content on the channel. There's crossover then into the streams whenever everyone comes over and tunes into the streams. It kind of creates like a nice, healthy sort of ecosystem.
Well, what caused the initial interest in all this? It seems like you've got a process now, but there was a time before that. So like, how did you get in, and like, were there kind of moments where you felt there was a change in your relationship with content creation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it initially started more so just sort of like as just a, you know, an idea. Like when 26 and I worked at Microsoft, there was they had like a games library, and you could just borrow games there. So we were just like, you know, we'll just try uploading some videos. And that was like way back when I was super shy, I didn't have much confidence, so I didn't even do voiceover. It was just raw gameplay we uploaded for a while, and then gradually started to just do more stuff. So, but like I definitely say for the first couple of years, it wasn't even something that I necessarily thought that I was like necessarily wanted to do, and you know, it was never like the intention that was like, oh, this is going to be a job. It's just like, we just upload some videos, we enjoy games, why not just talk about things that we enjoy? And then as it started to kind of build more and did more of it, then it started to kind of, you know, understand the kind of content that I enjoyed doing, understood the kind of what we wanted to do, and then it started to form like, oh, this is actually something that I would quite enjoy doing. But it was even in that position where, like, while I was at Microsoft, I was never going to be like, oh, I'm actively going to quit my job and do this, because it was quite risky. But then, you know, it was sort of like one of those forced hand moments, because there was like a big merger at Microsoft, and then some of the teams moved around and basically got made redundant. So I was like, well, this is a good chance to try it. So I then thought, I'm going to set aside a year, try and make it work. If it works, cool. If it doesn't, you know, I'll go back and do something else. And then luckily in the year it kind of kicked off, and then sort of went from there.
That's amazing. Do you mind me asking what you ended up? What did you do for Microsoft, and if you're
Sure.
Xbox or PlayStation today?
If anything, I'm Nintendo, but I'm no, I like all systems the same. But no, I started off as a tester, moved up to like senior tester, worked on Forza Horizon when it first came out. Did some work on like Halo 4 and Gears Judgment and stuff for like the test stuff, and then I moved over to be producer on the video platform that was on Xbox One, Upload. So at the time, so I handled that for like I did a lot of that stuff for the launch of Xbox One. So we used to basically it was like a small team of like 8 of us, and we did like content there, community management there, account management. We planned events, ran events, we curated the whole hub and stuff. So there was a lot of stuff that we did within that stuff, which was cool because then it was also difficult because I was also running like I got that role internally at Microsoft because I was doing the YouTube channel and it was sort of like they wanted me for that same reason. But then it also got really busy because that was the time where it's like I'd work a full day job at Microsoft and it wasn't typical like 9 to 5. It's more like 9 till like 9 a lot of the days. And then I get home and then have to do YouTube videos. So I was like doing basically YouTube for Microsoft and then YouTube for that. And I was like, this is long, but
yeah, that's a long day.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. So let's pivot over into video games because obviously that's something that like from a passion perspective outside of just our content creation side of it. What excites you about Blue Protocol? You've been posting about it, obviously the anime connection, but yeah, talk to me about like what got you originally interested in it and what you like and so far you've seen.
So I mean, the original thing was just like the very first like announcement trailer they showed at E3. It just like looks awesome. Like any of those games that because the thing is for me, like I've always liked. It's kind of like I was sort of saying before, like Nintendo games, like or be just like liking games for just like fun factor. Like I've never really been like a graphics guy, right? Like, I can appreciate graphics. I can be like, oh, you know what, Red Dead Redemption is technically a very impressive game, but I'm just like, for me, if I look at something like Red Dead Redemption alongside something like Breath of the Wild is what catches my attention. I'm just like, I love that visual style. So, you know, anime cel shaded stuff and all that kind of like anime style, like, it always looks really enticing. And I think for me, it's like, I love MMOs, right? I think back to like the World of Warcraft days. The harsh reality is I don't have the time to play MMOs these days. And I know this like deep down, I'm like, you don't have the time to play this. But yet I still yearn for MMOs all the damn time. I'm just like, I just want a new one. I want a new one. So I can jump in and realize, wait a minute, I don't have the time for this. But, I still want to. Exactly, right? So there's always those, you know, it's between like Blue Protocol and Lost Ark and all those other different games that I want to play. But it just looks really nice. And also it's got that kind of like, it's got that nice like blend where, you know, because I think back to like my MMO experiences back with like World of Warcraft and Guild Wars, a lot more like throw a ton of abilities in like a panel, press your buttons, watch the moves cost. Whereas a lot more so now, there's a lot of MMOs that are going down this kind of action combat route where, you know, fewer moves, but more just freedom and fluidity of movement. So you see that in Blue Protocol, you see that kind of like combat, the motion, the movement, the action side of it, but it's also in like a loop of a game where I can live. I can just be like, let me go there and gather some stuff and log in every day. So yeah, they've
talked about like the player economy, and I think that is something that's very important. And one of the things that when we talk about Division, Destiny, like there really isn't a player driven economy, and that can work and that can be just fine. But I'm just like you. I've been like, oh man, what's that next thing that's really going to like remind me of how little time I have in life to play these games. And when they said that player economy, I was like, oh man, because if everything isn't so like run this dungeon, and eventually get this drop, if it's like, oh, run this because it has this material that then is driving the player crafting, that means that there will always be some kind of value there. And the fact that gear levels up, like you've covered it with great detail, but for anybody who doesn't know, like you have skill trees, and it's like we haven't seen those in modern MMOs. Everything's so like streamlined. You have where your gear and weapons level up, and they've tried to figure and match this with matchmaking itself, whereby taking all of your choices and your gear and your level and giving you a battle rank, and that will determine what you can matchmake into. And I was like, that's so smart, because I love matchmaking because I don't have lots of time to always form that group. But then I feel like in recent MMOs, like we've sacrificed a lot for the sake of matchmaking by making less player driven choice. And I think when we look to 2020 and beyond, it seems like a lot of people are trying to push back into like, no, let's give people the option to build these crazy characters. And we see it kind of with the looter shooter in varying degrees. Destiny, obviously with the subclasses, Borderlands 3 with how you have your skill trees, Division 2 with how you decide to build out your perks and and specialized. And so it's like, it's always, I love that about those kind of games. Like, just like, give me a character and don't tell me about the meta, because I'm just not a meta guy.
No, I don't mean it's one of those interesting ones where sort of like from a content point of view, we'll always kind of follow and like pay attention to the meta, because obviously ultimately when it comes to content, a lot of people want to know that stuff. But me deep down, it's like outside of like producing the content that I know that people want to watch, like me deep down, I'm a similar kind of person. I'm like, I'm not too fussed about like mess. I'm like, obviously if my character can kind of be more efficient or do something cool, that's fine.
Yeah.
But like, I think back to like Monster Hunter as an example, right? Like obviously we'll showcase like sets on how to be like super efficient or how to kind of, stack a ton of damage. But I think like ultimately I'd rather just put together a set that looks cool and just enjoy myself at the same time, right? So yeah, I definitely see on that.
Have you had time to touch other games that maybe you guys haven't covered? Things like Wilson or anything like that?
So we need to ask Wilson.
Not yet. I have. Okay. I've been watching that. I really wanted to play that because I love those kind of games. Like I'm like massive Diablo fan, and I play like a lot of them, like obviously with Lost Ark and things like that. So I do definitely want to try that out. I mean, the guys have streamed it. The guys tried it on stream.
Yeah.
But I was kind of, when it first came out, I saw there was like a lot of issues and stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna wait for like a few weeks and wait till things like level out, and hopefully if I get like, it sounds kind of funny because like obviously in light of current situations, everyone's like, well, now everyone's got loads of time. It's like, well, my job hasn't actually changed, so I still don't actually have any time. So I'm just like, but yeah, I would love to check that out. Yeah, and I try to sort of like, for me, when I'm not like covering things on the channel, I spend a lot of time playing like smaller like indie titles. Like I love my Switch and like a lot of the games that I play because those are the sort of games that I can fit into like a weekend. I can play like 10 hours and it's just done.
Do you play handheld or do you play on a TV or a mix of both?
Mix of both. I try to play handheld wherever I can, just because I like to just kind of get away from my setup and get away from like where I'm at. And I've got I bought like a Switch Lite. Like I love my Switch Lite. It's just it's funny because it's one of those devices where when it's first announced, I was like, I don't really need this, but I bought it. And when I got it out of the box, I was like, this is just great. Form factor wise, it's brilliant. And it's like, I know I can't dock it. I know it doesn't have half the features of like the regular Switch, but it's just a great portable device. So I've got that with like a nice grip. So a lot of the time I'll just sit downstairs on the sofa and just like play through indie games and stuff.
It feels so much, the Switch Lite feels so much better like in handheld. It's just way more comfortable from a handheld perspective. But that loss of, it makes me wish that if they ever did came out with a Pro, that it would be something that actually isn't handheld, that it's just like a powerful thing hooked up to your TV, and then with the cloud that your saves are always in sync, so that way you're just like, all right, I'm done, I'm gonna switch over to the TV. Yeah, because that's like my Switch, the one that docks, like the Joy-Cons are starting to drift, and it's like, all right, well, okay, I'm just gonna play with the controller, so it's just sitting in the dock, and I'm like,
right,
man, how much better would this be if it just was dedicated with maybe no Wi-Fi connection and a direct line for Smash. One day we'll see.
One day.
The Chris, do you have any other questions for him regarding World of Warcraft or even Wilson? Because I think that's what I was really glad you brought up, because I remember you did a build and all of a sudden your damage went from like nothing to.
What's interesting about it is that meta conversation. It's the game that jumps to mind when you talk meta, because it's developed by a small team. And it was limited to, effectively compared to major titles, no testing prior to going public. And then it went public with a lot of bugs. And as they fixed those bugs, the initial round of bugs, a lot of them drastically changed the way people played. So you have this stat circle that you pick things from, and some of them didn't up your stats. Like it says, oh, plus 12% to health. It doesn't change your health. Like it just doesn't work. The tooltip's there, the effect is not. And so you put a point into it and it doesn't matter. There are other things that were like, instead of giving 0.5% damage, it's giving you 50 times as much damage.
Oh, damn.
And so the first big round of bug fixes also effectively were balance fixes, because the first big round was they went through and they said, okay, all the things that didn't work now do, and all the things that worked too much now don't. And so effectively they just went in and corrected everything, and people were pissed because they're like, well, but I have this God mode build where I've been running around literally with no gear on. People were running around naked, one-shotting everything. And they're like, I don't understand. Like, you're not going to let me run around naked beating all the bosses anymore? And it's no, we're not. And so like, it's interesting to see the meta change week over week over week, because every 7 to 14 days, there's this drastic change where there's all this crying about my build is broken. And then there's all this cheering about like, oh my gosh, now this new build is viable. and it just changes so rapidly. The problem is that for an average player, you're experiencing all of this wonderful gameplay and this constant change while the game is crashing, while bosses are spawning in walls, while chests are spawning out of reach, while the thing it tells you, okay, kill 5 of these things. Oh yeah, one of them's in the floor. You can't kill that one. You're gonna have to leave game. So that there's definitely bugs happening, and you just have to accept that or wait like you have. But when you talk about meta, it's fascinating to see a game that changes so quickly, as opposed to World of Warcraft, where there can be like a whole, I mean, they really only kind of have like 3 big patches per expansion. So you could have 4 or 5 months or 6 months where you feel like your character is suboptimal. I mean, we see that in 14. And so, you know, when we talk about Blue Protocol, like, I don't know what's going to happen there with meta, because yes, it's nice to be able to ignore the meta as long as you're still viable for the content you want to do. Maybe you won't be the top end, but that's will things be able to do the average content?
The question is that how is meta, and Alex, I'd be curious as your thought, how do we see meta changing when we've gone from tab targeting and auto damage with kind of like your auto attack to like action RPG with that like the looter shooter, but also with like Blue Protocol, which is you can dodge. You don't have to take damage if you've got the skill, where skill ends up can really offset and make more things either viable or make it to where you're like in Phantasy Star Online 2, like the high end gamers like don't even bother with defense. You should dodge or you should go home. You know, it's like it's all about damage. Like where it's like, okay, well, yeah, as much as options you give people, it's all going to boil down to what is your damage per second. What's your thoughts on that? With an action
game. I feel like when it comes to action-based games, obviously there'll still be things. There'll still be like, you know, this move may be infinitely better than this move. But like when you look at the way that, at least from what they've shown so far, like skill trees in Blue Protocol, there's only like a handful of things. It's like per slot you have, well, from what they've shown, per slot you have 2 things to choose from. So I don't think there's going to be like, you know, obviously there might be like best in slot gear or best in slot weapons. But I think for a lot of it, it's going to be one of those games where player like. I mean, there's obviously, even with games like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, things like that, there's obviously a player skill element as well. It's not just a case of you have the build and, you know, some people still need to understand mechanics and stuff. But like, I feel when it's like more action based and stuff, it's, you know, more akin to like Monster Hunter. Like there's more like, it's kind of half and half. Like your armor set matters, but obviously if you don't have the skill, like if you don't know how to like read the monster and dodge out the way, you're still going to get hit. You're still going to die, right? So I feel like Blue Protocol is probably going to sort of straddle that line where it'll be, I want to say, I mean, I don't know because I haven't played it yet, but I want to sort of say it might kind of sit in that happy middle where it's like almost a more accessible MMO that you can jump into and enjoy semi-casually, like if you just want to jump in and have some action fun and things like that. But then for the people that want to go and, you know, be more specific, they can kind of do that thing. So I feel like it might sit quite nicely in the middle, potentially.
With people coming and going casually, especially as you talk about like best in slot and terms like that, how do you feel looter shooters should handle loot over like the course of a game that lasts a long time, right? So when we look at MMOs, like with Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, you know, all these, when an expansion drops, basically the whole previous 2 years is tossed in the trash.
Yeah.
And then you start over and you build up, and every 3 months. So then because of that, you constantly have to invite new players in with what's called catch-up mechanics to kind of get them up to speed so that they don't have to play through years of progression. How do you think games should handle that, or like should they just not, and they just have like once you're best in slot you're just good forever?
I mean, I think there always needs to be some kind of progression. I think it's an interesting kind of this sort of conversation with a few people before, where like the whole birth of the looter shoot. I mean, because like, you know, loot-based stuff has been around for a long time, but you think back in the days, like when it was like World of Warcraft stuff, before we had things like Borderlands, before Destiny was even a thing. Like when you think about it, really, like if you played WoW, you were a PC gamer, right? You played on PC, and like generally speaking, sure, there were some people that might have played WoW more casually, but generally speaking, if you're playing WoW, you know the system, right? You're like, okay, cool, I'm going to play here. You know, I need to check in. I need to do my weeklies. I need to do my dailies. Like, okay, cool. There's a new expansion comes out, and everyone's like, "That's fine. A new expansion's out. I know my gear's useless. I know the very first thing that drops off this random boar that I've killed is infinitely better than my raid gear that I farmed 5,000 hours for." It's like, but you're cool. Like, you're used to that, and it's interesting because I think at that point there was definitely a big separation, right? It's like people on PC were playing things like World of Warcraft, were familiar with this kind of thing, and then you have like your console experience, which for a long time was like, you know, I mean, not to generalize. There's obviously hundreds of console games, but you got like your Call of Duties, you've got like your racing games, you've got your kind of action adventure games, and they're kind of more like in a contained thing. Like people on console were largely speaking at that time, unless you play something like Phantasy Star Online, we're largely speaking used to like, I buy my game, I play my game's finished, cool, unless it has like multiplayer, right? Then you had this weird bridge gap where like suddenly for when things like Borderlands, even when Borderlands came out, because Borderlands at first was still like, it was a loot, it offered the loot stuff, but it still was kind of like a game that was just finite. So I would say like until Destiny came along, you didn't really kind of encounter this, but then Destiny came along and it was interesting because for a lot of people that had kind of like just lived predominantly on console, had never had exposure to things like Diablo or World of Warcraft, was suddenly experiencing this loot stuff for the first time, and they were liking it, but they'd never experienced the idea that like something I've worked towards isn't always going to be valuable. And I think that was an interesting turning point, because for a lot of people, they were like, well, in every other game I've played, I get to the end of the game, I've got the Megaton hammer, this is strong, it's great. And then they're like, but wait a minute, I just played Destiny for 200 hours and now a new expansion's come out and you're telling me I can't bring my gun with me? It's like, this is standard practice. Like, but a lot of people weren't used to this. So I still feel, but I still feel like it has to happen. I still feel like all that kind of stuff, because ultimately, like, maybe not everyone agrees, but for me, I'm just like, even if I would never want to be in a position where I play expansion number 1, I get best in slot item, and then expansion 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 comes out, and I'm still using that same item, because you often find developers struggle as well. You look at like Destiny 1 had so many crazy, exciting exotics, and then you fast forward through their expansions, and they started to get like a bit samey or not as exciting or things like that, because obviously they're potentially running out of ideas, or things aren't necessarily always filling that same thing. So if it was the possibility to kind of keep something forever, you'd be like, well, I'm still going to use my icebreaker 5 years down the line. It's like, do I really want to be using the same stuff? Like, I like the idea that a new expansion comes out and you're forced to go and test the new stuff and then mix things up, right?
What about like more lateral games? So like you worked on Forza Horizon. So Forza Horizon, they can add a DLC and then you're forced to drive differently, right? So like we're going to move to dirt courses. So like, yeah, you have all the best like Ferraris and Lamborghinis and McLarens and stuff, but like that's not going to help you here. Like that's no longer best in slot for this activity. And like when you go back to that activity, you will have those cars forever and ever for as long as the current Forza Horizon goes. But like with those DLCs, you can somewhat change it. We see games like Guild Wars do that, right? Where like they just turn it, or like Monster Hunter is a great example, right? Where having a build might be really great for one thing, but then like introduce some new monsters and that build can fall to the wayside.
True.
Is there room for something like that can you think of ways like that could come into a looter shooter?
I mean, potentially. I don't, off the top of my head, I can't really necessarily sort of think of the example. I feel like those kind of games, it depends on the kind of loot experience you want to say. Like, because you could compare something like Monster Hunter alongside something like Destiny, right? Both of them offer loot, but in kind of different ways. But for Monster Hunter, it's never been like a game as a service. Like Monster Hunter, although like you can hunt monsters indefinitely, technically speaking, there is kind of an end, not in the same way. You just, you get to the credits, you complete the story. But what I mean more so is like, there's, once you defeat all the monsters, once all the DLCs kind of come out, it's like, you can still use, there's crazy people that will still run and hunt a monster with no armor on and then run and like defeat it with like a giant spearfish, like, greatsword. So principally like Monster Hunters, because I suppose it falls more into that kind of like action, where I think this is where it is. I think for games where where there's like a balance, where like your underlying abilities is a mixture of your personal player skill and your gear. So like Monster Hunter, like you can have the best gear in the game, but if you're rubbish at the game, that's not going to help you. Meanwhile, take something like Borderlands, and if you have a really, really, really good build with like the best guns, you could be terrible at FPSs, but you can still go through and one-shot things. So like you take like some of those, I think back into like the days like Guild Wars 1, like there was the crazy monk build where you had 50 HP, but you were literally invincible. Like you could be the worst player. Like I didn't play monk and someone gave me the things that I needed to do it. And I was like, I'm not dying. I'm going into the hardest content solo. Like that wasn't player skill. That was just purely gear. So I feel like ultimately the answer, the kind of long roundabout way to answer your question is sort of like, if the gear system underpins like your general like power and ability, if that is literally what makes or breaks your power, then I think it's always going to be a gradual moving goalpost. Meanwhile, if it's like a balanced thing where it's like player skill paired with something like that, then I think there's room for kind of a more lateral progression.
So Borderlands 3 just dropped on Steam, like full release. So it's been on the Epic Games Store. I know that was that causes some contention, but it does continue to go and show just how competitive the gaming space and these platforms are going to try and step up, because it would be in Epic's interest just to piss off gamers if there wasn't some end game goal. But Borderlands 3 now on all the platforms that are originally intended. You have Destiny 2 just dropped the Season of the Worthy. You've got Division 2 just dropping Warlords. And then we're going to talk briefly, if we have a little time, on Anthem, because it's like they're working on some kind of 2.0, and that I'd like to get your perspective. But what is the state of the looter shooter? Because one of the things beyond the game and the fun is I do end up, at least YouTube does try to recommend me like all the drama. People like mad about something in these kind of games. And so like what is your take of the overall like opinion of just the health of kind of the looter shooter in terms of gaming culture, whether it's
Yeah, I mean, people are always gonna be mad, right? Like people just want to be angry about something, right? It's like, well, on one side, negativity is just the thing on YouTube. Like it's like, hey, if I'm angry at something, people go and like it, like because like at the end of the day, sometimes people just want to watch someone that is gonna get angry for them. But I mean, like ultimately, I think a lot of that stuff still stems back to even those sort of same people that are complaining. And they may have been playing those looter shooters for like the past 5 years. They may have been there since Destiny 1. But I still feel like those groups of people still really fall within the camps of people where they probably didn't play WoW back in the day. They probably didn't play those games. And while they've heavily got into this current series of games now, they're still ultimately new to the concept that like what you've worked really hard for isn't going to be there forever.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, but also I think maybe part of the reason I think one of the things for me that has often let me be so level-headed about a lot of stuff is because I worked in the games industry. I see how a lot of this stuff is done, and I also know what can be done and what can't be done.
Yeah.
Right? So it's given me that vision, right? So obviously, when developers do things or something that happens, and then people get angry, right? And I'm like, it might frustrate me. I'm not gonna lie. Like when I had the really cool flak build and then they nerfed it, I'm like, oh man, that's annoying. But I'm like, I can understand why you've done it.
Yeah.
And also when people are like, oh, can you change this thing? I'm just like, I'm not even gonna. Or sometimes I'll have people like say, oh, can you like do a video on this and ask people to change it? I'm like, I'm not gonna do a video on it because A, there's no purpose, and B, I know that stuff is not going to be fixed because I know the way that this stuff works. So like, there's some stuff. So, but I feel like some people, like, I guess if they don't necessarily have that understanding, I guess if they're super invested in it and obviously their audience is around it and they've built their audience around it, they're like, well, I want to express my anger. I get it. But I think a lot of the time it's just you have people, like, especially in the looter shooter space, people become so invested on that one particular experience, and then when it changes, like they have to voice their stuff. But I just think like looter shooters in general, I think it's a great genre. It's a great emerging genre. But I almost feel like we're getting to a point now where like we just need something new. Like the next generation is around the corner, and I love my looter shooters. I've spent so much time playing them, but like really, I was sort of playing some stuff the other day, and I was like, it's about time we get new stuff, like new mechanics. Like I mean, and sure, on one side you can say, well, there's only so many ways you can shoot monsters and get loot from them. It's like, but the one thing is, every time like you get a new console generation and there's like new power and new things that people can do, it suddenly ushers in like developers can do things that they've never done before. And it might not be drastically groundbreaking to begin with, but I feel like there's a lot of games right now that are just kind of just samey, right? So I feel like I want to get to what's next, really.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of what's next, and companies that, somebody with industry experience, you might be able to shed some light on this. Destiny 2 split off from Activision, right? And everybody was immediately like, oh my gosh, everything that was bad about Destiny 2 was Activision's fault, and everything that was good was Bungie's fault, and it's going to be nothing but good from here on out. Now we're getting far enough from that separation that we're starting to see things where like maybe Activision's blank checkbook was helpful for dev resources. Compared to the more finite checkbook Bungie has and things like that. Like, how does a player set expectations around what the game can and can't deliver? And like, is it just a black and white, like, oh, it's good that they split off, or it's bad that they split off?
I mean, I don't know too much about the kind of behind the scenes business side of that stuff, but I mean, I think it's like it's 100% like it was definitely not all Activision's fault. Like, it might be Activision may have been the people behind, say, trying to push like certain angles into like some monetization stuff, or they might have been the people that have said like, oh, you know what, we need to make this more like, because for example, when Destiny 2 came around to begin with, it was a lot of the kind of in-depth systems were stripped back a little bit to obviously make it appeal to more people. They may have had a hand in kind of pushing it that way slightly, but then there's also like in a lot of talks like internally, like at Bungie, there's always been like different teams with different directions. It's very similar sort of, obviously not in the same vein because Anthem had a lot of problems, but it was a very similar vein to when they spoke about Anthem development. They were like there were different teams. There was teams that like wanted to be heavily story based and invested in that, whereas the teams that were also like more so in the like player investment and like the MMO side of it. It's like but then they can never quite agree on the middle ground. So there's always this kind of constant back and forth. So yeah, I mean, it's never black and white. It was never like Activision were the devil. Not to say they were perfect, but at the same time, yeah, there's benefits on both sides. But I think the ultimately is like now that Bungie are free, they're free to do whatever they want. But I think it's just gonna be like they're gonna have to move a little bit slower, right? I think people realize that they might have just thought straight away, oh cool, now they're free, everything's gonna be like roses and it's gonna be great. When the reality is there's gonna be like a kind of cooling off and migration period anyway, where Bungie are still finding their feet. I feel like honestly for me, because I lapsed from Destiny for a while, I watch all the new stuff and I watch to kind of stay in the loop and what's going on. But I haven't played since Black Armory, and I personally will wait until they reveal was some kind of Destiny 3.
Whatever the big thing is, because it feels like I've often said this about sometimes the games, because like being and studying game development and having, like being a software engineer, like there are a lot of things that do translate the minimal viable product. I know a lot of gamers very frustrated with that mindset. Just get it out, we'll patch it after the fact, and that's another. Anthem, I think, is a different case because I know a lot of people like to blame EA specifically for Anthem, but I just look at it as EA just said, we funded you for 7 years, just release it. Like, if it's gonna die, it's gonna die. Like,
well, that's the thing. From a business point of view, like I know everyone loves to kind of hate them, but like, yeah, from a business point of view, you got to realize, like, as a company, that at the end of the day, like, it's funny because the whole anytime people talk business or money around games, it seems to be like this kind of scary topic. Not even scary topic, like this sort of like taboo topic. You can't possibly associate gaming and money. But it's like, but they'll quite happily say, musicians are money, fine. Movie stars are money, footballers are money, right? But it's like for the people on the other side, like at the end of the day, games is still a business, right? And like if EA are a company, they're paying for that stuff, like they're well within their right to be like, you've been working this for 7 years, we've sunk millions of pounds in. You better put something out because we need a return on this. Like, obviously, sure, it would have been nice to be like, oh yeah, give us another 6 months. But then if you can keep on saying that, like, is it going to be like 10 years later? Hey, we just need 6 more months. Like,
well, I mean, if you look at the Anthem, how it launched and how they're doing 2.0, like, I don't know if you followed it the last update. I actually was playing it. I played it a couple of weeks ago, just like, because I actually got into Ice Tide, the 1.6 update. I was like, for some reason, I was like, there is some magic there. Like, when you look at it, like within all of the rough, like there's this, and I was like, I really like this thing, and so I was playing it, just having a good time with Ice Tide, and I was like, man, like I hope that they can really kind of turn this around. But then I look at it from an engineer's perspective, and when they launched, and people were like, oh, it's gonna be 2 months until like they'll have this patch, and I go, in my mind, I'm thinking at a minimum 12 months, like to turn things around. Things in game development aren't light switches. That just we forgot to turn that on, and now it's perfect. And I was like, no. And then when you look at some of the core design principles, their only choice is to do what they're doing, which they've been working on it for a year now, and who knows how long it's going to take. But like, yeah, they would have come back if they asked for 6 more months from EA. They would have come back and asked for 6 more months from me. Like, it's like, when is that 6 more months actually gonna turn around a product?
Yeah, and I think initially as well, like that initial kind of struggle anyways, again, when that sort of like article came out from like Jason Schreier, like, it sounds they also had that same issue where it was like, ultimately, they had difficulties with tech. Yeah, they had difficulties with Frostbite engine. Yeah, there's a lot of like technology and like infrastructure stuff, but ultimately there was also a big directional push. Like, I mean, I got to see Anthem way before it was even announced. I got to kind of like go and sort of part of like a EA Game Changers thing and sort of like, give some feedback. And like early on, when we kind of, it's interesting to sort of see some of the stuff that we gave feedback on very early. and they still didn't really. Not to say that not to say that I would go to something and they'd be like, we have to listen to you. But at the same time, it's like, some of the things that people were complaining about is the same stuff that we gave feedback on to say you should probably fix this, and yet it made it into the game. And it was very clear at the time, like, no disrespect for them, because there's a great team, but it was very clear there was camp of the team that's like, we're very here about like making cinematic and story-based games, but they clearly don't play MMOs or any of those kind of games.
Yeah.
And when these systems came in, and we fast forward to like E3, like I fully enjoyed my time at Anthem. I covered it for a while. And I loved the foundation of it. So there's not pretending I didn't, but at the same time, even when it was E3, when it's like, I'm always skeptical when you say to someone at E3 like, oh yeah, can you talk about Endgame? And they're like, not right now. And it's like, okay, I get sometimes they don't want to talk about it, but then when it gets to the point where it's like, can you talk to me about the Endgame loop? And they're like, oh yeah, well, you go out and do some quests. I'm like, yeah, but what about raids? What about Endgame? And they're like, not really.
We'll
sure.
talk about that after launch.
Yeah,
like,
and that's always a bit of a gray area. And then obviously it ended up being that kind of thing. And it was difficult for us because obviously we covered it because we always covered it from the point like from anytime you go to a preview event. I think a lot of people forget. They're like, always like, oh, you told me this game was going to be great. This is going to be brilliant. It's like, yeah, well, I went to a preview event. I got to play for 6 hours. I got to see a slice of the game. And that slice of the game didn't in any way tell me that the game was going to be terrible after like 60 hours or 100 hours.
I told people not to pre-order. And then I remember people coming back later saying like, you told me this game was going to be great and I should play it and you suck. It's like, well, no, I mean, I guess you need to check your hearing, or you're just angry and you're blaming me. Like Chris said it, like hands down. He was like, we don't know what the future for this game looks like. That's what people are going to love about it. We can tell you about this vertical slice, and that was interesting, but they are not.
I did not pre-order.
Yeah.
I still don't own it. Even when it dropped to like $4 or whatever, I just didn't buy it because it's like, no, I still don't know. Like I could still save that $4 for a Steam sale. Like you still haven't told me, you're still telling me just buy it, it'll get better. That's not a good enough reason. Like I'm not saying it can't. I am not ruling them out, and I wish them the best. There were some truly inventive things about it. Playing the little bit that I did get to play was the core game loop had some fun in it. They just haven't delivered us enough of a cohesive message, and like they've had a lot of turmoil inside. They've had a lot of turnover. That's hard to deal with for any company, much less something that's under so much scrutiny. The problem with the level of like visibility they have in the gaming space is from day one it had to be good, as opposed to if they'd been like like Wolfson, for example, that's like a 13-man indie team. Like there's a whole lot of forgiveness there. People are like, well, this is buggy. Diablo 3 was buggy, and it was like 10 years of development, and it was funded by one of the biggest players in the game. Cut these guys some slack. So like I'm willing to put up with their bugs in a way that I would have never tolerated Anthem.
Is there a game, because as we kind of wind down the show, I mean, I could talk to you all day, but I know you got a big day ahead of you in terms of content, and a couple embargoes apparently are lifting. I can't wait I'm looking forward to whatever you post. It's always fun, but like outside of embargoes and NDAs, because like that is a thing. Outside of that, is there any particular game in any of the genres that we've talked about in this podcast that you're either looking forward to just with a great passion or interest in 2020 or 2021 that it might not be on people's radars?
Definitely. I mean, not necessarily the genre, but 100% Breath of the Wild 2, just because I'm a massive Zelda fanboy. But honestly, Godfall. No, they haven't announced it yet. I'm hoping. Like, I keep thinking that potentially it could be this year because I'm like, it's built in the same engine. They showed a trailer last E3. I picture that whatever they do in this E3 window, I know E3 is not happening, but like, if they do like a live stream, they could show some more. And maybe like I'm wishful thinking is saying they could just release it at Christmas or if not, very beginning of next year. But
Nintendo doesn't have delays around E3 because all their stuff's pre-recorded, so they can just release it on the same day. It changes nothing.
Yeah,
this is true. That is very true. Yeah. But then outside of that, Godfall, like again within the looter space, like because it's funny. I play so many looter shooters, but inherently, I'm not really a shooter guy, right? I just like loot games. I like all that stuff.
Monster Hunter being a big thing for you, yeah.
Exactly, right. So melee combat is I will always go to like, even if I play MMOs, I would never go to the ranger or the mage. I go to the warrior or the assassin. Like I just like melee combat. So the idea that I can have a loot based game with the awesome looking melee combat from like the small teaser they showed, like potential sort of Dark Souls slash DMC action element to it. Like, woo, that could be really cool. So yeah, that's probably my number one on my kind of radar for like next gen.
How about you, Chris?
I mean, right now I'm really excited at Final Fantasy VII coming up, and the fact that they're still saying Cyberpunk is not delayed, it obviously makes it a big anticipation game for this year. We don't know anything about Shadowlands, and like that's getting to the point where it's starting to be alarming. It's getting to the point where it's weird that we don't have more information on test realms, on a release date. If you pre-order it, the asterisk always says like, oh, we'll get it to you by the end of the year. It always says that. That's no change. But like the fact that we don't know, like, okay, are we talking July? Doesn't look like it. We talking August? Doesn't look like it. Like, are we talking about an October, November? And if we are at this point, does that put it around the same time as BlizzCon? Does that put it around the same time as FanFest? Like, what does that mean for Blizzard? And like Shadowlands is a pivotal moment off of the last couple years that Blizzard has had, both by choices of their own and by things outside their own control, and by the success of Battle for Azeroth versus Classic. Shadowlands has to be good. Like if it's not, it's going to do some damage to the brand. So like those are things I'm looking at this year, and I'm hoping that all three of those are nothing short of fantastic.
So let's go ahead and wrap up. For me, I would say the Bravery Default 2 for Switch, hands down, super excited. And then I would say really curious and hopeful the New World's good. It's more about the combat and about if the developer listens. I think I know a lot of people will like care about like numbers and whatever, but if the developer listens and if they're able to have that, at least that trust with the player base, like, okay, if something's not working and we trust and then we work together, like, yeah, I'll get fixed. And as long as that is within some kind of obviously reasonable timetable, who knows? Like beta kicks off here in a couple of weeks, I believe. They don't have a date, but we're waiting. I'm excited. I'm hoping the combat's good. If the combat feels good, that's going to be what's important. Combat can look good, but if it doesn't feel good when you're controlling it, then you're just not going to stick with it. So we'll have to wait and see. Alex, where can people find you? Why don't you? The floor's yours. So please tell people where they can go and follow you.
So you can find me over on YouTube, Alex Gaming YouTube, and also on the Video Games YouTube now, and otherwise over on Twitter, where I'm posting random Animal Crossing stuff all the time. twitter.com/Alex.
Chris, what do we got coming up?
Last show with Avalon Star. Next week, we don't know yet. We have guests. We just don't have enough confirmation to say it yet. And I don't know. I'm stuck at home playing games. You're stuck at home playing games. We'll see what comes out.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's go and wrap the show because I know you got to get out of here and go do YouTube content creation things. So for Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
And I'm Alex or Arix. There we go.
Dude, this guy's freaking on point. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We really appreciate you hanging out. If you guys liked and enjoyed the show, let us know and go follow Alex if you don't already. So he's got his the video games, his new channel, and obviously his gaming channel. Lots of stuff. Links are in the description. Check him out.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, dude. All right, see you.